The air still tastes like burnt plastic and wet ash, even from my side of the street. Red and blue lights are still strobing across the faces of my neighbors, all of them huddled together in their bathrobes, murmuring words of sympathy. And in the center of it all is Camille, wrapped in a thick firefighter's jacket, playing the part of the tragic survivor perfectly. She's dabbing at her dry eyes with a soot-stained handkerchief someone had given her, accepting hugs and shaking her head in perfect practiced disbelief. And I just stood there on my own lawn, feeling this hot, useless rage bubbling in my gut, because they don't know. They see a poor woman who lost everything. I see a liar. I see a performer. The thing is, I work late. I'm a night shift custodian at a medical lab, so my hours are all screwed up. I got home at almost 1 a.m. the night before the fire, and I was just about to kill my headlights when I saw her. Grunting, struggling, heaving this massive, dark wood chest into the trunk of her beat-up sedan. It looked old, antique even, the kind of thing you'd see on a roadshow and find out it's worth a fortune. She kept looking over her shoulder like a cartoon burglar before finally slamming the trunk shut and scurrying back inside. So when I saw the flames, my first thought wasn't, "Oh my God, Camille." It was, she actually did it. I tried to tell someone. I really did. I walked over to one of the fire captains, a guy with a kind, tired face, and I tried to explain what I saw. I stammered. I know I sounded crazy, but I told him about the chest. He just put a heavy hand on my shoulder, his expression a perfect blend of pity and exhaustion. "Son, a fire like this, it's a trauma for the whole neighborhood. The mind plays tricks, fills in blanks, you're in shock." He wasn't listening, he was diagnosing. He gave me the same look you'd give a frightened child who swears he saw a monster in the closet. Then he turned back to his crew, leaving me standing there in the flashing lights. And in that moment I knew I was completely, totally alone in this, and I knew I wasn't wrong. Of course, the official report came out a week later. Faulty wiring, case closed, just another sad story about an old house and bad luck. The fire marshal's summary was a masterpiece of bureaucratic indifference, a few paragraphs that effectively erased the truth I knew. The local news even did a short, schmaltzy segment on it, painting Camille as the resilient heart of the community, already looking to rebuild. The insurance company, eager to close the file, cut her a check. A GoFundMe, started by some well-meaning but clueless neighbor, popped up and pulled in thousands from bleeding hearts all over the city. And just like that, Camille checked into a long-stay hotel downtown, the kind with a kitchenette and weekly housekeeping, her tragedy monetized and her future secured. And that's when it started to really eat at me. She began posting on social media. It wasn't just one or two updates, it was a deluge. Photos of her smiling bravely, holding a glass of wine on a balcony, with captions about new beginnings and rising from the ashes. There was one of her holding a new, ridiculously expensive-looking handbag with the hashtag Treat Yourself. Each post was a little victory lap, a celebration of her perfect crime, and every single comment was a chorus of "You're so strong," and "We're praying for you." It made me physically sick. I felt like I was the only person in the world who had seen the real movie, while everyone else was applauding the trailer. It was a masterclass in manipulation, and I was the sole, unwilling critic in a sold-out theater. My obsession became unhealthy, I'll admit it. I started driving by her hotel after my shifts, just looking up at the rows of identical windows, wondering which one was hers, picturing her in there counting her money. I'd park across the street, my car engine off, just watching the entrance for a glimpse of her. I scrolled through years of her online photos, going deep into her digital life, trying to find a picture of that antique chest, some piece of evidence to prove I hadn't imagined it. I wasn't just looking for clues, I was looking for validation that I wasn't losing my mind. My friend Dave tried to talk me down. We were grabbing a beer and I was ranting, probably for the 10th time, about Camille's latest post, a picture of a spa receipt captioned "Self-care is so important during trauma." He just shook his head, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Owen, man, you gotta let this go. So what if she saved one box? Maybe it was just sentimental stuff. Photos, her grandma's ashes, who knows? You're turning into a stalker over this. It's not your problem." He meant well, but he was one of them now, another person telling me what I saw wasn't real. It just pushed me further down the rabbit hole. His doubt was like gasoline on the fire of my conviction. I was the only one who cared about the truth. I couldn't take it anymore. The isolation was crushing me. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life, screaming a truth no one could hear. So I did what any desperate, sleep-deprived person in the 21st century does. I turned to the internet. I found a subreddit R true off my chest, and under a throwaway account I let it all out. I didn't hold back. I typed until my fingers ached, pouring every ounce of my frustration and certainty into the post. I titled it, "I think my neighbor committed insurance fraud and everyone is treating her like a hero." I described the scene in painstaking detail. The sickly orange glow of the fire against the night sky, the smell, the way Camille's face looked under the flashing lights, not like a victim, but like an actor hitting her mark. I described the chest. I wrote about its dark, polished wood, the way she struggled with its weight, the sheer panic in her eyes when she thought she heard a noise. I recounted my conversation with the fire captain, his dismissive tone, the way he made me feel like a child. I laid out the timeline, the GoFundMe, the triumphant social media posts. I ended it with a simple, raw question. Am I crazy, or is this the most obvious thing in the world? Then I hit post and waited. For a few minutes there was nothing. Then the first comment appeared, and another, and another. Within an hour my post was exploding. It was like I had kicked a hornet's nest. The comments were a chaotic mix of absolute support and vicious condemnation. You need to call the insurance company's fraud hotline now, one user wrote. My uncle is a claims adjuster and this has red flags written all over it. Another one chimed in, the social media stuff is the biggest tell. Grieving people don't post selfies with blessed. But for every comment that validated me, there was another that tore me to shreds. You sound like a bitter, jealous loser, one said. You're angry because this woman is getting sympathy. What a horrible person you are. People grieve in different ways. Dude, you saw a woman move a box, that's it. You've built this entire conspiracy in your head. You need therapy, not Reddit. I sat there for hours, refreshing the page, watching the upvotes and downvotes battle it out. I was arguing with strangers in the comments, defending myself, getting angrier and angrier. But then a seed of doubt, a tiny, poisonous seed, began to sprout. What if they were right? What if I had taken two unrelated events, a woman moving a box and a house fire, and woven them into a narrative that only made sense to me? The fire captain, Dave, half of Reddit, they all thought I was the crazy one. For the first time, I started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, they were right. The doubt gnawed at me for days. I stopped the late-night drive-bys. I muted Camille's social media profiles. I tried to just go back to my life, to the predictable rhythm of mopping floors and emptying biohazard bins. I tried to convince myself it was over, that I had been wrong. But the image of that chest was burned into my memory, a persistent ghost I couldn't exorcise. My certainty had curdled into a miserable, confusing fog. The break came on a Tuesday afternoon in the most mundane way possible. I was heading out to my car when I saw Frank, our mail carrier, making his rounds. Frank's been on this route since before I even moved in, a cheerful guy with a sun-weathered face and a limp from an old knee injury. He was stuffing circulars into the community mailbox unit near the curb. Hey Frank, I said, just making small talk. Afternoon, Owen, hot one today, he replied, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. Tell me about it. Hey, crazy thing about Camille's house, huh? The words just tumbled out of my mouth before I could stop them. I was testing the waters, I guess, seeing how the story sounded in the plain light of day. Frank stopped what he was doing and frowned, a look of genuine concern on his face. Oh yeah, terrible business, poor woman. He paused, sorting through a stack of letters. Funny thing, though, he added, more to himself than to me. She put in a mail hold request 3 days before the fire, said she was going out of town for a bit. I figured she'd already left when I heard about it. Guess her trip got canceled in the worst way possible. He said it so casually, so offhandedly, but for me, it was like a bomb went off. The world, which had been fuzzy and uncertain, snapped back into sharp, terrifying focus. It wasn't a coincidence. People don't accidentally schedule a mail hold for the exact period their house is scheduled to accidentally burn down. They don't pack their most valuable possession and arrange for their mail to be stopped, and then just happen to be the victim of faulty wiring. Every doubt I had vanished, replaced by a cold, hard certainty that chilled me to the bone despite the afternoon heat. The fire captain was wrong, Dave was wrong, the Reddit trolls were wrong, I wasn't crazy, I was right. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my phone. I walked back into my apartment, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I immediately went back to the subreddit, to that same post where I had been called a monster and a lunatic. I didn't even bother with a lengthy explanation, I just clicked edit and added a new section at the top. Update, I typed, my fingers flying across the screen. I just spoke to our mail carrier. He's been on this route for over 20 years. He told me Camille filed a formal mail hold request with the post office 3 days before the fire. She told him she was going out of town, so she moved the chest and she stopped her mail. Tell me again how I'm the crazy one. The effect was instantaneous and electric. The entire tone of the thread flipped. The doubters fell silent and the supporters became galvanized. My inbox, which had been filled with a mix of support and hate mail, was now flooded with messages of encouragement. Holy shit, op, that's the smoking gun. You need to go to the police with this, and the insurance company. This is an open and shut case now. Find out where she's storing that chest. It's the only piece of physical evidence you have. Their words were fuel. My fear and confusion were burned away, leaving only a white-hot sense of purpose. They were right. I couldn't just be a keyboard warrior anymore. The time for hiding and doubting was over. I had to see this through. I had to confront her. It was surprisingly easy to find her. A quick online search for storage units near her hotel. A few phone calls where I pretended to be a delivery driver with a package for her, and I had it. Secure Space Storage, Unit 34 billion. The name of the place felt like a joke. She had her secret locked away, safe and sound, while the whole world pitied her. I knew what was in that chest. It had to be documents. Insurance policies, fake appraisals, maybe cash, everything she needed to profit from her little bonfire. And I was going to be the one to open the box. I staked out the secure space storage facility for 2 days. My car became my command center, littered with empty coffee cups and fast food wrappers. I felt like a private eye in a cheap movie, running on caffeine and righteous indignation. On the third afternoon, her beat-up sedan pulled in. I watched as she got out, looking tired and drawn, a stark contrast to her cheerful online persona. She fumbled with the keypad at the gate, then drove slowly toward the rows of identical orange roll-up doors. My moment had come. My heart was pounding, a frantic drumbeat in my ears. As she slid the key into the lock of Unit 34 billion and began to heave the heavy door upward, I got out of my car and walked, fast, toward her. Camille! She jumped, spinning around with a terrified gasp. Her eyes widened when she saw me, a flicker of recognition followed by pure panic. "What are you doing here?" she stammered, instinctively trying to block the entrance to the unit with her body. "You can't be here, this is private property." "I know about the chest, Camille," I said, my voice low and steady, though my insides were a mess of adrenaline and nerves. "I saw you the night before the fire, and I know about the mail hold. I know you planned it all." Her face went pale. For a second I thought she was going to deny it, to scream at me, to call the cops. I was ready for a fight, but instead something in her just broke. Her shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of her, replaced by a wave of utter, soul-crushing despair. She started to sob, not the performative dabbing of tears from the night of the fire, but ugly, gasping sobs that shook her entire body. "You don't understand," she choked out, her voice thick with tears. "You don't know anything." "Then show me," I challenged, my voice harder than I intended. "Show me what's so valuable you'd burn your life down to save it. Open the chest." She didn't argue. With a look of profound resignation, she turned and stumbled into the dimly lit storage unit. It was packed, floor to ceiling, with boxes and bags and junk. It looked like the inside of a hoarder's house, and there in the middle of it all was the antique wooden chest. Her hands trembled as she undid the latches. She lifted the heavy lid, the hinges groaning in the silence. I leaned forward, my heart racing, expecting to see stacks of cash or glittering jewelry, but it wasn't that. It wasn't anything like that. The chest was filled with dolls, dozens of them, old porcelain dolls with cracked faces and missing eyes. Some had their hair crudely chopped off. Others were dressed in bizarre, handmade outfits of stained lace and mismatched fabric. They weren't collector's items, they were monstrous. They were the kind of thing you see in a horror movie, each one more unsettling than the last. Camille reached in and picked one up, cradling it like a lost child. "They were my mother's," she whispered, her tears dripping onto its chipped, smiling face. "I have a problem, a sickness. The landlord, he was evicting me. He called my things a fire hazard. He was going to have the city come and clear everything out, throw it all in a dumpster. The fire, it was the day before they were supposed to come. I had to get them out. I couldn't let them be thrown away. They're all I have left." She looked up at me, her face a mask of shame and grief. "I didn't start the fire, I swear to God. I just got lucky. Horribly, terribly lucky." I just stood there, frozen in the doorway of the storage unit. The air was thick with the musty smell of old fabric and dust. The sight of those grotesque dolls, combined with the raw, unfiltered misery on Camille's face, completely short-circuited my brain. Every ounce of my self-righteous anger, my detective-like conviction, just evaporated, leaving a cold, hollow void in its place. This wasn't a criminal mastermind. This was a profoundly unwell woman, drowning in a secret shame that was far more complex and pathetic than my simple narrative of greed. The chest wasn't a treasure box. It was a coffin for her sanity. The eviction notice, the hoarding, the desperate act of saving these broken things, it all clicked into place. The fire hadn't been her scheme. It had been a coincidental, almost cosmic intervention that saved her from one humiliation only to plunge her into another. And I had made it so much worse. I hadn't uncovered a crime. I had just barged into a sick person's private hell and shone a spotlight on her deepest wounds. My crusade for truth was nothing more than a grotesque violation of her privacy, fueled by my own arrogance. I had cast myself as the hero in a thriller of my own making, and in the final act I discovered I was the villain. The shame was suffocating. I felt like a bully who had just cornered the weakest kid on the playground. I drove home in a daze. The world outside my windshield seemed muted and distant. When I got back to my apartment, the first thing I did was go to my computer. I pulled up the Reddit post, my monument to my own stupidity. I saw the triumphant comments, the calls for justice, my own smug updates. Each word made me cringe. I deleted it all, the original post, the updates, every single comment I had made. I wiped the slate clean. Then I started a new post on the same subreddit. It was the only thing I could do. The title was simple, an apology to the person I wrongly accused. I didn't mention Camille by name or go into the specifics of her hoarding. She had suffered enough humiliation. Instead, I wrote about myself. I confessed that I had built a narrative based on suspicion and circumstantial evidence. I admitted that I had become so obsessed with being right that I had completely lost sight of the human being at the center of the story. I took a stranger's tragedy and twisted it into a mystery for my own entertainment, I wrote. I appointed myself judge, jury, and executioner because it made me feel important and smart. I was wrong, horribly, profoundly wrong. To anyone who read my last post and got caught up in my witch hunt, I'm sorry. And to the person whose life I invaded, I know you'll probably never see this, but I am more sorry than I can ever say. Don't be like me, don't assume the worst in people. Sometimes the truth isn't a conspiracy, it's just sad. I hit post and walked away from the screen. There would be no more updates. My crusade was over. The only thing I had managed to expose was my own breathtaking capacity for being an idiot.